So it's officially been almost 1 year since I've moved to London, and as it comes up on 1 year, I was just reflecting out here. I think it's really good. You can get to a space, for example, out here in nature, where you can do it in your own room, you could do it wherever. And I was just reflecting on the changes, how much has actually happened. And it reminded me, because it's so easy to forget how much has actually happened. Like when you live in the day-to-day, you don't see the gradual changes. And it's the same if you have a goal, if you have something you're working towards, you don't see the changes in your own life. Often it is quite hard to see those changes, and then someone might come and say, oh my gosh, Asher, you've changed so much, and you're like, what the, no I haven't. And then suddenly you brought to attention and you realize, like, oh wow, I've actually changed a huge amount. And it's really hard to see. Like, it's really hard to see for myself even. You need to believe what the other person is saying and be like, wow, there is change here. I think often I can be blinded to my own change, and that can be discouraging. Like, you forget how far you actually have come, and it's hard to see that even when people tell you. But I was really reflecting on the last year, and it's been a huge year for me. I moved out from my parents. Not just that, moved to a different city, the biggest city in the UK, to London. Started my first corporate job, started university, all these things. And yeah, it's incredible, actually, how much development there has been. And that's partly been because I've been thrown into it all. You're kind of forced to develop and forced to grow up quick and mature and figure out things like council tax and rent and bills and all these other stuff. And yeah, I couldn't imagine telling myself that 2 years ago, Like, it's such a weird feeling. It doesn't even feel real. It's almost like the body is so good at adapting that things feel unfamiliar for a very short period, and then, for me at least, it just becomes normal. Like, it just feels so easy. And I think there's a danger in that. And I'll tell you a story. So, where I work, the building is super cool. It's very old, and it's very, like, the architecture is amazing. And I remember walking into the building on my first day of work, the induction day, terrified. I was so nervous, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a huge deal. Like, I'm going to this very prestigious company with this super beautiful building, and I was like, I'm terrified. And I remember that feeling. I remember it really well. It's like everything feels so unfamiliar, like so uncomfortable, so unfamiliar. And I would say probably, even a couple days after I started coming to the building to work, it was like, okay, this is normal now. This is life. This is how it's going to be. And your body adapts. It decides, okay, I have to adjust to this, and I have to accept that this is now what it's going to be like. And it's really funny to me because people come to where I work, and I'll bring, like, friends or visitors or people that just, work with me or don't work with me, but I want to show them around, and they have the same reaction, right? They are genuinely shocked and surprised and in awe of the architecture of the building. And it's amazing. It is truly amazing. And yet I sit there, I look at them, and I'm like, I remember that. I remember that feeling so well. And yet I feel nothing like that anymore. It's kind of sad actually, because you lose the awe of it. And I was thinking about this as I was going on my run right now. Like, I don't know if it's ingratitude, but it's almost like it becomes when the familiar, and when you become familiar with something, you almost lose the weight of it. It's easy to look past. Yeah, it's easy to look past how substantial it was in your life. So for me, living in London feels so normal now, you know. I was back with my parents out in the countryside, and it was lovely. It felt so easy. But it was also like, oh man, like, I've established my life in the last year in like a whole different city to my family. You know, it's like it's this really crazy feeling. I'm so grateful because the last year has given me so many friends and so many really close people that have come from London, and the opportunities here are just beyond anything I've ever experienced, and I'm so blessed. But it's so easy for me to forget that and to just think this is how life is now, and that's just how it is going to be. And it's scary. It's kind of scary. I was thinking about this, like, maybe that's why people struggle. Maybe that's why it's never enough for people. Like, I have goals, I have things I want to achieve, but I also wanted to achieve moving to, okay, maybe not moving to London, but I wanted to achieve like getting the job that I have, and I have it now, and it's not going to fill me up. You know, it's been amazing, but it's not the be all end all. It's not going to fix my life. And it's the same with like more money. You know, right now it's like, oh, I could do with more money. You know, living in London is so expensive. But if we apply the same logic to that, it's just going to fill a hole, and the hole will get bigger. So it doesn't actually fill proportionately. That's how I think about it. And that's why you see so many rich people who are so unhappy, you know, and they say, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. I'm like, well, you know, is that BS? Like, come on, you know, you have so many problems fixed if you were in financial freedom. But the whole is not money. The whole is that it becomes comfortable. When it becomes comfortable, you lose the awe in it. Millions and millions of dollars in your bank account is not impressive anymore. It's actually quite depressing. So it seems. Not for me, but for others, maybe. You know, I mean, I don't know. So I guess it's all about reference points, right? You know, what is your reference point to your life right now? For me, my reference point, what I'm trying to think about, was me 2 years ago. You know, when I was in A levels, I was studying. I didn't know what I was gonna do. You know, I didn't know what my path was. I still don't. Don't get me wrong, I still don't. But I'm getting an idea. I think. You know, I think. Path is not straight, but it's just about taking that next step. So my reference point, when I think about it like that, is like, wow, I've made a lot of change. Like, just the fact that I've moved out, never mind anything else that I've achieved in the last year, never mind the opportunities, the things I've been involved in. That in itself is success, right? God, that tree is so uncomfortable. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and he has quite a tough job. Like, his job is, he has a lot of experiences with customers and people at his work that are crazy. Like, they're genuinely like crazy experience. Like, police have to be called sometimes, like the ambulance has to come sometimes. And I was saying to him, I was really thinking about this, like, your reference points are so good because you can reference a time, aka at work, where the police were flipping called, or the ambulance came, or someone was almost dying, and you compare that to your life now and you think, okay, a slight increase in council tax is not going to kill me, because I literally experienced someone, you know, having, you know, some medical issues and the ambulance coming, and I was in charge of this. So it's like, whoa, that's a reference. That's an insane reference point. And then it struck me. So are you saying the harder things I do, so aka things that I do that are tough, that are uncomfortable, that are hard, I can use as reference points? Well, of course. And then I thought, I was at work literally like 6 months ago, and I was telling my colleagues, we were just chatting at lunch, how I'm training for a half marathon, and they were like, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through that pain? And I was like, well, I want to do like a marathon, maybe some ultra marathons at some point. They were like, that's ridiculous, a waste of your time. You're going to put yourself through so much pain, and for what? I was like, well, you know, you got to live a little, you know, you can't appreciate things in life if you don't do tough things. But now thinking about it, it's like, that's a reference point. I do that super hard things. Like my brother literally ran up Snowdon twice. What a reference point. Like bro can be, you know, he could be tired, he could be hungry, but he could think, well, it's nothing compared to running up Snowdon in the rain doing 50 plus kilometers. So doing these things that are hard are really good to make you realize in your current situation how blessed you are. And if you think, well, I haven't done any hard stuff, well, actually you might be surprised. You know, really think back to the last year. Like for myself, how much hard things have I actually done? Okay, maybe I've slipped into comfort a lot of the times. Maybe I've just sat and, you know, there hasn't been things. There's been times when I've been, you know, actually seeking comfort rather than uncomfortable situations. But for the most part, just the fact of moving and changing jobs and seeing new people and chasing things that are uncomfortable, even filming these videos, you know, like it takes deliberate intention to do them. But when I finish them, I can reference, I can be like, well, I filmed 20 or so videos in the last 6-7 months. What's another one, right? So I guess in conclusion, like we all go through really hard things. Like it's a feature of life, right? You're like, if you don't go through hard things, you know, I don't know if you're human. So when you're having a tough time, you know, when you're had a bad day, like myself for today, I'm like, oh man, I was unproductive, you know. Okay, well, what a privilege that I can even think that I'm unproductive, because that means I was productive at one point. Are you following? If you're following, you get it. That's a reference point. And I think that's how we should look at life.